This weather is about to get intense as we hit the heart of severe weather season. It's been unusually warm for this time of year, especially over the last several days. And now we actually have some cooler air, and that's going to spell trouble in the form of severe storms. It really kind of kicks off today, but all the way through Tuesday of next week. So we could be looking at 5 days in a row of active severe weather in different parts of the country. For today, we've got a rapidly deepening area of low pressure further to the north, back into the Dakotas, as well as into Minneapolis, into Wisconsin. This is the same area that's actually been well into the 90s, obviously much unusually warm for this time of year. Now we've got that cold pocket aloft, and that we have an upgraded, elevated risk for severe weather. In fact, and even a tornado watch was just got issued. But look further south, there's your more active subtropical jet stream, and this is also going to kick things off in a big way, as we've got multiple disturbances will be coming in from the west, and then the active dry line heats up in the afternoon. Those two pieces of energy start to come together and start eroding the capping inversion, and should start to erupt showers and thunderstorms that will likely turn severe with big time hail producers, especially as we head into Saturday, Sunday, Monday, really even into Tuesday. So let's break it down for you for today. We do have that upgraded, elevated, enhanced risk for areas all the way into Wisconsin, essentially further south into Michigan, getting down into Illinois, as well as into Indiana. So if you live anywhere from Duluth to Minneapolis, down to Milwaukee, although over to Green Bay, Grand Rapids, down to Chicago, further south into Indianapolis, and then we've got that cool front that will sag south into St. Louis, down to Memphis, going all the way into Little Rock. You got to be on high alert, especially further to the north where that low pressure center is a 981 millibar. That means business for this time of year. And it's going to spell trouble in the form of tornadoes potentially. And some of these could be strong tornadoes. In fact, we already have a tornado watch that literally just got issued for several tornadoes, if not a couple of intense tornadoes. This could be in the variety of that EF2 type caliber tornadoes. So unfortunately, things go downhill very quickly between now and say 8 o'clock tonight. We could be looking at some scattered large hail, and the atmosphere has the potential, right? It has the potential to see up to 3 inches in diameter. That is literally baseball size. Of course, not everybody's going to be seeing that in isolated pockets. The atmosphere does call for that. And we could be looking at some significant wind gusts of upwards to 70 miles an hour. So we've got all 3 modes of severe weather on the table, and it doesn't end there. It actually even amplifies even further tomorrow. So as this thing winds down later on tonight, it ramps up quickly further south into tomorrow, and we already have an upgraded moderate risk for further south into St. Louis, back to Paducah, as well as into Clarksville, Louisville. It includes those areas into Indianapolis, all the way into Charleston, West Virginia. And then that will likely extend along the cool front. And we do have upgraded risk as well, of a slight risk down to Arkansas and even down into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They could be seeing some severe storms as that capping inversion slowly starts to erode. And unfortunately, we could be looking at some bigger time hail producer thunderstorms. Some of that large hail, again, 2-3 inches variety. And unfortunately, yes, some of those strong, if not some intense tornadoes, upwards to, strong tornadoes and upwards to 75 miles per hour winds is definitely not out of the question. So if you break it down just over the next 2 days, the latest short range guidance kind of looks like this. Obviously, where the low pressure is, that's where the most intense weather will likely be. To the right of that, within the warmer sector, and you got the cool front on the back side, back through the Dakotas, but especially starts to light up into Minneapolis, into Wisconsin, and then pushing into Michigan. But notice a little bit of a dry slot that's starting to come in here. That's the separation from the low that's lifting northeast, and then we have that secondary piece that forms further south. And if anything, we talked about this yesterday, that Kentucky, again, unfortunately, was going to be a favorite area in the bullseye, if you will, and that's exactly what's happening with that latest update from the Storm Prediction Center up in the ante on that severe moderate risk for tomorrow. Because look, I mean, it pretty much covers the entire state of helicity tracks, larger hail. The whole state will likely be rotating. It's a dangerous day down there into southern Illinois, Indiana, all of Kentucky, getting into Tennessee. And yes, that extends further south into Arkansas, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, and then along the cool front, we will see, southeast of the Metroplex tomorrow. We could be looking at some isolated supercells starting to form, with likely some bigger time hell producers tapping into some of that 4,000 and 5,000 CAPE values, your convective available potential energy. So there's a lot of energy in the atmosphere, and there is the helicity tracks. What we're talking about is pretty much the entire state of Kentucky lights up. So we do have some significant risk further north into Minneapolis, down to Wisconsin, as well as into the Green Bay region, getting into Michigan. But notice kind of the more or less the drier slot, not as intense, but wow, it really lights up as we head into Friday, going into Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, and then back into Arkansas. And then, of course, you're more isolated, still fighting a little bit of a cap there in Texas. So if you break it down over the next 48 hours as far as the rain amounts, yeah, you could be looking at several inches of rain right over that low pressure center, likely not moving as fast. Lighter amounts as this lift northeast. And then where you can more or less have the conveyor belt of moisture will unload 2 to 3 inches. But we're not looking like any serious flash flooding or anything like that. This is mainly going to be a severe weather risk and, unfortunately, a tornado risk. You could be seeing, some of those, between today and tomorrow, we could be looking at, 50 or so tornadoes is likely probably not out of the question. The combination of both days as things get really active, and unfortunately, maybe a tornado outbreak, even maybe today if things start to get going, but especially heading into tomorrow. But it doesn't end there. It just shifts further south. And as we'll be watching those disturbances that come out from the west, tapping into a more juicier type air mass with this dry line. And what happened yesterday, that dry line didn't push all the way into the Dallas area. So much of the areas didn't actually go up in temperature because they never got into the dry slot. They were always in the warm sector, the moister air. So they hit it on the heat index, but not the actual temperatures. So it was a big bust for many areas, but it also spells trouble with the extension of what's to come, because this whole area is prime. It's prime. It just needs some sort of trigger to break that capping inversion, which is likely going to have now. But by the time we hit into Saturday, and that's what the culprit is going to be a disturbance that's coming in from the west. So as soon as this comes in from the west, I think the morning activity in Oklahoma and Texas is pretty kosher. Not that not much is going to happen, but once we hit past, say, the 3-4 o'clock time frame, all the ingredients are going to come together. We're going to be 90 degrees. We're going to have dew points in the low 70s and mid 70s. That's a combination of trouble, and that could be some larger hail producers. So anything that forms in that air mass would likely break the capping inversion as it starts to erode and become supercellular with no problem at all. And that's why we do have that upgraded a slight risk for severe storms heading into that Saturday, May 17th, for Oklahoma, Arkansas, as well as into Texas. This is along the cool front. And then we have an elevated risk as well, mainly a wind and hail threat, North Carolina, Virginia, back into Delaware, as well as into New Jersey. Those areas had to be on high alert. and it lights up, folks. Yeah, there is the lightning density over a 6-hour time span. So I think the time frame further south, Oklahoma and Texas, would likely be after 4 o'clock. We're probably talking 4 to 11 o'clock time frame. So just be on high alert as it comes in at peak heating. That's on Saturday, but that ain't in there, folks, because it's also tapping into some of these pretty extreme energy levels, folks. I mean, these Cape values are anywhere from 4,500 to as much as 6,000. That is very significant. So we've got a lot of dynamics in the atmosphere, unfortunately, that says, hey, these could get pretty nasty supercells and unload some bigger hail into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, into Oklahoma, into southern portions of central Texas. So just be on high alert. And there's the setup after 4 o'clock. Things get lit up in a big way across this region, getting into Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas. And I think it's more or less a daily occurrence, unfortunately, because the same similar setup. They'll likely pulse down after 11 o'clock at night. The morning activity will be fine. Boom. Once we heat it up in the afternoon, we hit 90 degrees. We tap into some of those low 70s, hot mid 70 dew points. We start tapping into some of that convective available potential energy in the afternoon. Again, after 3-4 o'clock, boom, the jet stream's prime for activity. And we're going to be seeing yet another day of severe storms on Sunday after we heat up big time further south into the plains and much of the southeast. But notice what happens to the north. I mean, you could kiss those 90s goodbye, which you had a couple of days ago. We're going to be in the 60s, right? So that's a pretty big swing, a 30 to 35 swing just in 3 or 4 days. But all the attention is going to be further south, and it's going to be lit up in a big way. So this is Sunday, right? So this goes into Sunday. We have this, your lightning index kind of lights up again. We could be looking at more supercells draped across Oklahoma and Texas, much of Arkansas, kind of the similar areas. That's on Sunday. And it goes to Monday, it goes to Tuesday. Here's the analog index for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Here's your Colorado State University. And here's where we stand so far with the Storm Prediction Center lighting up this area. And this would easily get expanded and extended and likely upgraded. And some of these days could be easily enhanced or even say a moderate, especially as we get into Monday and Tuesday. So this is, you're going to have to be on high alert. If you live into the plains, you got the upper Midwest for today. You got down through the Tennessee Valley through Kentucky for tomorrow, and then it shifts south into the southern plains, and then it expands into Oklahoma and much of Kansas, and even points further north into Missouri. So things get really active, folks. So definitely buckle up, be on high alert, have a way to get watches and warnings, and stay tuned for updates while I protect you before and after the storm.